41,000. That's how many people got liquidated overnight. Silver dropped from 88 to 74 in a few hours, and 41,000 accounts just vanished. Gone, wiped, screens frozen, stop losses ignored, margin calls hitting faster than anyone could react. And while most people were sleeping, the biggest wealth transfer of the year happened right under their noses. Now here's the part nobody wants to hear. You could be next. Not because you're dumb, not because you're unlucky, because you're probably making the same exact mistakes they made. And the market doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about your exposure. So let me break down exactly what happened, why it happened, and how to make sure you're not the next person staring at a liquidation notice wondering where it all went wrong. First, let's talk about what actually happened, because the mainstream narrative is going to tell you silver dropped because of profit-taking or year-end rebalancing or whatever excuse sounds reasonable. That's not what this was. This wasn't a market moving naturally. This was a trapdoor. A clean market doesn't drop like that. A clean market bleeds slowly. This was a guillotine, and guillotines don't happen by accident. They happen by design. See, the market has one job when leverage gets crowded. Find the weak positions and take them out. And the way it does that is brutal but simple. It figures out where the pain thresholds are clustered. Where did everyone set their stops? Where does the margin math break? What price level triggers the cascade? And then it goes there. Not because some guy in a room is pressing buttons, but because the structure of the market makes it inevitable. When too many people are positioned the same way with the same leverage at the same levels, the market doesn't need a conspiracy, it just needs a match. And that's exactly what happened. Silver was running hot, everyone was bullish. Leverage was building up behind the price like water behind a dam. It looked stable, calm candles, smooth lines, people getting comfortable. And then one crack formed. Maybe it was a margin hike, maybe it was a big player unwinding. Maybe it was just thin liquidity at the wrong hour. Doesn't matter. Once the crack formed, the water didn't flow. It exploded. And 41,000 people found out the hard way that leverage doesn't multiply returns. It multiplies consequences. Here's what most people don't understand about a liquidation cascade. When those 41,000 accounts got margin called, they didn't choose to sell. They were forced to sell. Their broker didn't ask permission. The system just closed their positions at whatever price was available, and when tens of thousands of forced sell orders hit a thin order book at the same time, price doesn't discover value. Price hunts collateral. It doesn't stop at fair value. It stops when the liquidation stop. That's why the drop felt like gravity turned on. That's why slippage showed up out of nowhere. That's why your perfect stop loss became a fantasy. And here's the thing that should really scare you. The market knows where your stop loss is, not literally, but statistically, because pain thresholds cluster. People use the same leverage. They set stops at the same obvious levels. They trade the same patterns. So when the move comes, it doesn't hit one person. It hits a crowd. And when a crowd gets hit at once, the move accelerates. That's the loop. Liquidations cause more liquidations, which cause more liquidations until the fuel runs out. So let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. If you were holding silver during that drop, what would have happened to you? Not what you hope would have happened. What would have actually happened based on your current position size and leverage? Would that drop have been uncomfortable, or would it have been fatal? Because that's the difference between the 41,000 who got wiped and the people who are still standing. It's not that the survivors were smarter. It's not that they predicted the move. It's that their position sizing made the drop survivable. The move didn't have to be big to kill those accounts. It just had to be bigger than their margin. And margin is a razor. It feels powerful until it cuts you. Now here's where I'm going to say something that might piss you off. If you got liquidated in that move, it wasn't bad luck. It was bad structure. You were overexposed, period. That's not an insult. That's information. And information is power if you actually use it. The market gave you feedback, expensive feedback. The question is whether you're going to learn from it or repeat it. Because here's the pattern I see over and over. Someone gets burned by leverage. They swear they learned their lesson. Then the market starts running again. Price goes up. Confidence comes back. They see other people making money, and slowly, quietly, they start sizing up again. A little more leverage, a little more risk, until they're right back in the same position, same exposure, same vulnerability. Just waiting for the next liquidation event to teach them the same lesson twice. The market loves to punish people twice, by the way. First, it hurts you in the drop. Then it makes you sell at the bottom because you can't take the pain anymore. Then it rips without you. That's the triple punishment. Drop, capitulation, recovery you miss. And it's not personal, it's mechanical. But it feels personal. That's why it works. So how do you break the cycle? How do you make sure you're not one of the 41,000 next time? Because there will be a next time. There's always a next time. The market shocks. That's what it does. The question isn't whether volatility will come. The question is whether you'll survive it when it does. First thing, you need to understand that volatility is not a verdict. Most people see a drop and think they were wrong. They panic. They sell. They make emotional decisions. But volatility isn't telling you that you were wrong about the direction. It's testing your structure. It's asking one simple question. Can your position survive this? If the answer is no, that's not the market's fault. That's your sizing. Second thing, you need to know the difference between forced selling and fear selling. This is crucial. Forced selling is what happened to those 41,000 accounts. They didn't choose to sell. They got liquidated. Their positions were closed automatically. Forced selling is mechanical. It ends when the liquidations end. Fear selling is different. Fear selling is people choosing to sell because they're scared. Fear selling lingers. It takes longer to exhaust. Why does this matter? Because if you can identify when a move is driven by forced selling versus fear selling, you can start to understand when the pressure is about to end. Forced selling creates sharp, violent moves that often reverse quickly once the liquidation's clear. Fear selling creates slow, grinding moves that can drag on for weeks. Same red candle, different cause, different response. Third thing, you need to accept that leverage amplifies whatever is already inside you. If you're disciplined, leverage can be a tool. If you're reckless, leverage is a loaded gun pointed at your own head. Leverage doesn't make you a better trader. It makes you more of whatever you already are. If you're patient, leverage rewards patience. If you're impulsive, leverage punishes impulse at 10 times the speed. And here's the brutal truth. If you're using leverage and you felt fear during that drop, you were already dead. You just didn't know it yet. Because fear means your position was too big. Fear means the move had power over you. And when the move has power over you, you don't own your trade. Your trade owns you. That's not investing. That's hostage negotiation. And the market doesn't negotiate. It liquidates. Fourth thing, cash is a position. I know that sounds boring. I know everyone wants to be fully deployed, catching every move. But cash is what lets you survive the storms and attack when everyone else is bleeding. The people who bought silver at 74 while everyone else was panicking, they weren't braver than you. They were more prepared. They had dry powder. They had cash sitting on the side specifically for moments like this. Because here's what happens in a liquidation event. People sell anything liquid. They don't care if it's good. They just care that it's sellable. That's why the best assets sometimes drop with the worst assets. Quality gets dumped with junk because nobody has time to separate them in a panic. And that's where the opportunity hides, but only for people who still have money to deploy. Fifth thing, you need rules that you set when you're calm, not rules you invent when you're panicking. Because in the moment of fear, your brain is not a strategist, it's an animal. And animals run. So you need systems, pre-made decisions, boundaries you don't cross, position sizes you don't exceed, loss limits that are non-negotiable. The people who survived that drop didn't survive because they made better decisions in the moment. They survived because they made better decisions before the moment. They sized their positions so volatility couldn't kill them. They kept cash so they could act. They had a plan so they didn't have to negotiate with fear at 3 in the morning. Now let me tell you who actually benefited from that 41,000 person wipeout. Because the money didn't just disappear, it transferred. Every liquidation is a transaction. Someone sold and someone bought. So while 41,000 people were getting their accounts blown up, someone else was accumulating at discount prices. Not because they're geniuses, not because they have inside information, because they were positioned to take advantage of exactly this kind of event. And that's the wealth transfer that happens in every crash. The over-leveraged give their assets to the prepared. The impatient fund the patient. The emotional become exit liquidity for the disciplined. Same market, same candle, opposite outcomes. The only difference is positioning. So here's my question for you. When the next liquidation event happens, and it will happen, which side of that transfer are you going to be on? Are you going to be one of the 41,000 watching your account go to zero? Or are you going to be one of the quiet ones accumulating while everyone else panics? Because the market is already loading the next move. Leverage is building back up. People are getting comfortable again. The same patterns are forming. The same crowded trades. The same clustered stop losses, the same overexposure dressed up as confidence. And somewhere out there, the next liquidation cascade is being set up. Maybe it goes up this time and shorts get destroyed. Maybe it goes down again and longs get wiped. Either way, the people who survive won't be the ones who predicted the direction. They'll be the ones who could survive being wrong. So audit yourself right now, not later, now. Where is your leverage? Where are your stops clustered with everyone else's? What happens to your account if price moves 20% against you overnight? If you can't answer those questions honestly, you're not positioned, you're pretending, and the market has a way of exposing pretenders. Here's the final truth. You don't get rich from one trade. You get rich from surviving long enough to let compounding do its work, and you can't compound if you're getting liquidated every time the market hiccups. The goal isn't to catch every move. The goal is to stay in the game, because the market can't reward you if you're not here tomorrow. So what do? We size positions so volatility is uncomfortable but not fatal. We keep cash for opportunities. We set rules when we're calm. We stop living one headline away from panic. We build structure that doesn't break when the candle turns red. And when the next 41,000 people get liquidated, we're on the right side of the transfer. Now I want to know where you stand. Drop a comment and be honest. When that move hit, did you feel fear or opportunity? And if you were leveraged, did you learn the lesson or are you about to repeat it? Because the market doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about your exposure. And the next candle is already loading. Hey. If you want to make sure you're not one of the 41,000 next time, subscribe, because we're building something different here. A community that doesn't get shaken out by every red candle. A culture that survives first and swings second. The liquidation wave is coming. Make sure you're ready.